Hello and welcome to the 21st episode of This Week in Mappercraft. Once again, not on time. Next week, probably going to be different. I've just been personally a little bit busy these past 2 weeks. The week we're going over was May 17th to the 23rd, and we'll be covering the years of 2015, 2016, 2017, 2020, and 2022. As always, all information here can be found on the Mappercraft wiki, which is linked in the description, along with the server itself. Let's get into the years. First up, in 2015, the server was running the first Earth World, hosted by Monsoon Jr. In 2016, the server was running Earth World 4, also by Monsoon Jr. In 2017, the server was running Earth World 6, hosted by Xenodyne. In 2020, the server was running Solace World 2, hosted by Solace. And in 2022, the server was running Earth World Redux, hosted by Damani. And first up, we have just two events from May 17th to the 23rd, 2015, during the first Earth World. And first, on the 18th, South America was colonized by the Happy Hungry Kingdom, themselves a colony of Orania. According to the quote, they found 13 mountains of clay and silver. Then on the 20th, Vaskmia grows with the return of Extra and several building projects started. The quote also mentions that some new players joined the nation, but this marks the end of the week for Earth World 1. And next up, we have a handful of events from this week in 2016 during Earth World 4. First, on the 18th of May, Asuka and Lapania united under the leadership of Emperor Matt. According to the quote, TL was promoted to Chancellor as well, with the leadership of the military falling to Nano. Also, Lapenia made an alliance with Armia Darmia. Yep. Next, on the 19th, the city of Hamburg was officially split up between Tomad and Pesminer. According to the quote, Tomad demanded that the city be given over so he could control more of Germany. Despite Pesminer's objections, Tomad proceeded to attack and kill him to take over the city. However, according to the quote, he still ended up splitting the city in half. It's unclear where the actual borders were, unfortunately. I don't have a map or anything of that. Also on the 19th, the Tallinn raids occurred when Josh, player Thentacle, went to Tallinn and stole items from Estonia in order to fulfill the debts Yesti had incurred against him. According to the quote, FedEx promised that he would raid Lapenia for an equivalent amount of items. The next day, on the 20th of May, the Hawaiian expedition took place when several Lapenian players traveled across the Pacific to the Hawaiian Islands. According to the quote, the player Oman was the first to land on the islands and was thus named Lord of Hawaii by Chancellor of Lapenia, TL. And following that, we have four more events from the back half of the week in 2016, from May 21st to the 23rd. On the 21st, the Entente Josh War kicked off when Thentacle declared independence from Lapenia in another attempt to loot FedEx. At first, he declared war just on Starim, but Lapenia and Armia Darmia would quickly join to put down the rebellion, forming the Entente out of the three major powers of the world. Although they would quickly defeat Josh and trap him at spawn, he would refuse to give up, escaping periodically to blow up more cities. According to the quote, the war ended when he accidentally blew up a bed and was thus banned. The conflict strengthened international relations between the Entente and apparently caused around 21 people to be online at the same time, which is pretty impressive for the time. Also on the 21st, possibly related to the Entente conflict, the Luxmanian rebellion kicked off against Lapenia. Armia also assisted in putting down the rebellion, as Tomad had economic interests in the area. According to the quote, the combined Lapenian-Armian force quickly defeated the Luxmanians, who surrendered after their capital was destroyed. The Lapenians then moved to reintegrate and rebuild Crimea. The next day, the 22nd, saw the annexation of La Rochelle and Carolina by Lapenia. Thus, the empire technically controlled the entirety of both of the American continents. According to the quote, the annexation had been in the works for some time, although it was officially declared on the 22nd. Both La Rochelle and Carolina became autonomous provinces, and the former king, Dan, became the Lord of La Rochelle. Finally, for the final event of Earth World 4 this week, we have the beginning of a skyscraper competition, as all the major powers on the world were on good terms with each other. So they began competing by making the biggest and most amount of skyscrapers in their cities instead of, warfare. According to the quote, Starm had the most with 9 completed and 1 to 2 on the way. The ADP Union had around 5, and La Peña had 1 to 2 under construction, but none finished at the time. We'll see if the peace continues into next week. And next up, we have a handful of events from this week in 2017 during Earth World 6. First, on the 17th of May, the Anda War continued from last week. Although many players thought that the griefs on Starum were illegal, they were declared to be legal, as Scully did actually know about being declared upon and purposely had remained online to allow Anda to grief. According to the quote, he was subsequently kicked from Starum on charges of treason, unsurprisingly. This, however, did lead directly to the Gibraltar crisis on the same day, which began due to a misunderstanding between Tomad and FedEx. Due to some of the chat messages regarding Scully getting kicked out of the nation, Tomad thought that Starum was attempting to invade Gibraltar and moved to counterattack immediately. The Aragon force was met outside Livonis by a similarly sized Starmiglian force. After a small skirmish, the Aragon force was expelled and the situation failed to escalate. According to the quote, it was FedEx, Jeriel, and Mitch for Starum against Tomad and Pib on the side of Aragon. A couple of days later, on the 21st, the first Pan-American presidential election occurred, as stipulated by their new constitution. TMG won the election and became the nation's first president. According to the quote, he received 5 votes, beating out Fayu with 4 votes, and Falcon with only 1. Technically, this does mean he didn't receive a majority, only winning by a single vote, so it was certainly a close and contentious election. Later that day, possibly as a celebration, the Siege game crisis began, when several different players began playing impromptu games of Siege at several different locations around the world. They began in the PAU with permission from Sikorsky. However, the games eventually switched over to Istra, damaging the territory without permission from Multi. When Multi got online, he requested investigation and rollbacks as the damage was illegal. According to the quote, Fayu, Tomad, and Scully were all eventually banned, and the damage rolled back. And next up, we have a bunch of events, all from May 22nd, 2017. First, the inauguration of the newly elected president of the PAU TMG took place. According to the quote, it was attended by several different players, including Batran, Multi, Flaming Arrow, Sikorsky, Solace, and Agnius. However, the inauguration was temporarily interrupted by the attempted assassination on the new president by Agnius 06. According to the quote, the attempt failed and Agnius was kicked out of the inauguration as a result. Following the presidential speech, one of the first actions of the new president was to make a move to support Imperia against their overlord Starum, a move which, according to the quote, horrified the Starmiglian leadership, and thus one of the president's very next acts was to repair relations between the PAU and Starum. The newly appointed Secretary of State, Solace, signed a free trade agreement between the two nations, helping soothe tensions. Additionally, according to the quote, FedEx was allowed to install a Coke machine in the presidential office. Presumably that refers to the soda. This marks the end of the week for 2017, though. And next up, we have just a single event from this week in 2020 during Solace World 2, when on May 23rd, the world end was announced. Solace World 2 had been slowing down a lot during May, and Solace was no longer able to host. According to the quote, the new host was announced to be Vegetable, a surprising choice given that he wasn't staff, but several staff members did know him pretty well. But that was the only event from this week in 2020. The actual end of Solace World 2 will be next week. And finally, for the last slide, we have 3 events from this week in 2022 during Earth World Redux. First, on the 17th, the 3-day war, also known as the Bulgarian-Ukrainian War, continued. The Ukrainian army fought a long battle against Bulgaria's German volunteers, ultimately ending in defeat for the Ukrainians. According to the quote, the Italian Empire then moved in to join the war on Ukraine's side by declaring war on Germany. However, this did ultimately lead to their unfortunate destruction. But it was not in vain, as on the 19th, the war ended due to the war rules at the time limiting all wars to a maximum of 72 hours. Staff declared that Ukraine had won and Bulgaria was annexed, with some land being given to the nearby Romania. Here's the quote for that. Ukraine and Germany would remain staunch enemies, at least until next week, as we'll see next week. But also on the 19th, the Disney-Kaori War occurred when personal conflicts between their respective leaders Pusillanimous and Irish Child escalated to a full war between the two nations. According to the quote, small-scale conflict occurred in both nations, but no griefing, with a white peace being agreed upon after only a few hours. That marks the end of this week in 2022, and that marks the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and check out the server and the link in the description. As always, if you have any additional information about any of these events, leave a comment down below or go ahead and add it to the Mappercraft wiki. See you next week for May 24th to the 30th.